Hey, what's up, everybody? Rodney Carr here with Average Man of High Value, back for our second video of our creation versus creation series, the biblical creation versus the science creation, and we'll see which one kind of answers the questions a little bit better. Um, let's backtrack a little bit to the previous video when I mentioned both stories say there was nothing and then there was everything. That is true. However, one story kind of has a whole bunch of nothing floating around, and then God there taking the nothing and then putting something into the nothing. And then you have the science version where the nothing collapsed into itself and then exploded outward into everything. Um, Before we get too much farther in, remember, hit that like button. Hit it now. Subscribe to the channel and then leave the comments so that way we can talk and learn from each other. And as we go through this, I'm not really going to tell you where my sources are in the video. If you want to know where I got this information from, please message me or leave a comment, something like that. I would be happy to share my sources with you. And if anything I say sounds off to you, please ask questions or give me other information for me to look into because I'm trying to learn as well. That's the whole point of this. I'm just sharing my journey and hoping that you guys join into this journey. And remember, I am a Christian. I follow Jesus, and so that's really what I believe. I'm going to do my best to not interject a lot of that while we're going through the information. But at the end, I will leave my final comments and all that stuff. But I'm going to try to leave the information pretty much just as is, so that way you guys can just compare it and see what happens. We're going to start with the Bible, and we're just going to do Genesis 1 1. That's the first book of the Bible, first chapter, first verse. We're not going any farther than that because if we do, it's going to be a really long video. So, Genesis 1 1 says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Now, some translations, instead of saying heavens, it just says heaven, but it's really interchangeable throughout the Bible. They'll say heaven sometimes, they'll say heaven sometimes, but really they're talking about kind of the same thing when they say that. But when you're reading through the Bible and you're reading it with our English language and our Western mindset, it doesn't read exactly the same way they were actually talking about it. So it says, in the beginning. Well, the Hebrew for that would be Bereshit. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. It's Bereshit. And it translates into in the beginning, but it can also mean at the start or at the head of all things. So, again, it's not necessarily exactly the way we think it. And then it says God created. Created is bara, which is Bara in the Hebrew. And that means created or formed. And the reason I'm going back to the Hebrew is because this is the Old Testament. The Old Testament was spoken in Hebrew. In the New Testament, it was written down in Greek. So if you're trying to figure out what the Bible actually says, Old Testament rule of thumb, translate back to Hebrew, New Testament, translate back to Greek. And that should get you pretty close. There's some gray areas sometimes from what I've heard from other people, but this is the way I've found it. It seems to work pretty well. So bara is created or formed. And then it says the heavens and the earth. So what are the heavens? In Hebrew that would be ha shamayin. That's HA dash SHAMAYN, and that's the Hebrew word for heavens, or shamayin, which is the same without the HA before it, and that's for heaven. like I said, both words can be interchangeable. But when we think of heaven, we think of where God resides, which is one of the things that it means. But in this case, the translation actually means the sky, sun, moon, stars, galaxy, universe, everything above the ground that we stand on is what they mean by the heavens, and also including the separate place where God dwells. And then earth created the heavens and the earth. Earth is Aries or Eretz. I've found multiple different spellings, but they all kind of said the same thing, so I just went with these two, and that's Eres or Erets, which is their words for earth. And earth could mean the planet, but in this case, when they're talking about it, they're using it to describe the ground or land or the, the surface on which life is actually sustained, right? So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If we take it back with the meanings from Hebrew, in the beginning could be at the start or at the head of all things. So you could put those in place there, right? So at the head of all things, God, remember, bara, created or formed. God formed the heavens or the sky, stars, universe, everything up above us, and the earth, the ground on which we stand and which life lives. That is what it's talking about in Genesis 1:1. Hopefully you can see why I only did one verse. And now we're going to go into the science side of it. And the way it's going to work is we're going to go equal parts, right? So I'm not going to go past that on the science side either. So in the science side of this, remember, there was a whole lot of nothing. It started collapsing on itself and then it exploded outward. And that is what we call the Big Bang Theory. So the universe began with an explosion of space itself, starting from an extreme density and high temperatures. As the space was expanding, it cooled, and while cooling, all of the elements started to form. The water molecules were getting attached to other little pieces of dust, and it was just all kind of free floating out there. And then this invisible force that's called gravity kind of started collecting all of it together and forcing it into each other to make these meteors and stars and planets just collapsing into each other. So that gives us the beginning. Kaboom, everything. Nothing, everything. Um, so then we have to say, well, what is gravity then? Because that seems like like the glue of what would be holding all this together. So gravity is the force that attracts a mass towards any other physical body having mass. It would be considered an emerging force and not a direct force. Like a direct force would be I have a baseball, I take it and I throw it at you, it hits you and bounces off. That's a direct force. An emerging force is kind of something that doesn't seem to be there until it just shows up on you. So, where does gravity come from? According to Einstein, gravity is caused by a wrapping of space and time. And this is currently the best working theory that our science has is space and time kind of all wrapped together and create this force that sucks things in. So, what does a wrapping of space and time mean? Well, anything with mass, including your body, bends a four-dimensional cosmic grid. This wrap in turn creates the effect of gravity, which is redirecting the objects that travel into it. And the strength of the gravity depends on the size of the space time wrap, which, yes, everybody, this means, according to science, size does matter. But what do they mean by size? Like, you could have a large object with small mass, and that would create a small space time wrap. You could have a small object with a very dense, heavy mass, and that would create a larger space time wrap, which creates more gravity. So it's not necessarily the largeness of the thing, it's the combination of the size and the mass that creates this wrap for the gravity. So four-dimensional, what is that, right? Well, 3D is where with an object you have space that is expanding out from this object in three directions: up, down, front, back, side to side. And it just goes continuously forever out into the universe, the energy coming out of us. That would be your three-dimensional thing. So you add the fourth dimensional in there, which would be time, right? So, like in a 3D movie, you would add slices of time to that object, and those slices of time would show it moving through space out towards you. And that also, those slices of time would pinpoint or point to exact moments where this object was throughout time. Um, so that really brings us up to Genesis 1:1 on both science and God. So we started on both with nothing and then everything, right? The Bible or Christian version says there was all of this nothingness and God was there and he created things into this nothingness. Science says the nothingness started collapsing on itself, creating a pressure to where it exploded outward and created everything. I'm still looking into where space and time come from because that's seems to be a key factor in there. What I've found so far is space and time can't exist without matter. And so it would seem to me that all of them had to be created at the exact same moment for space and time to even come into any form of existence. But I feel like I'm kind of in a scientific chicken and the egg scenario on this, so I'll update y'all more on the next video. But I hope I didn't dilute the information. From what I can see with this information that I've given so far, it seems like Genesis 1:1 and science both kind of agree with each other. And it just seems like science to me is kind of just showing how it happened. Not that it's not disproving the Bible at all. But that's my thoughts. The information's there for y'all to figure it out on your own. And again, like I said, leave me any comments, ask me questions. If I'm completely off base, then leave me spots to look up as well. And if you want my sources, I'm more than willing to give them to you. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, follow the channel. Let's talk, let's learn, let's grow, let's figure this out. Anyways, y'all have a wonderful rest of your day.